Behind Hollywood's dazzling lights and red carpet smiles lies a side few ever see. From celebrated legends to silver screen icons, some of the industry's biggest stars carried secrets far darker than any role they ever portrayed. In this countdown, we're revealing the shocking truth about 30 of Hollywood's most notorious figures, where the real-life scandals and sins eclipse the fiction they performed. Get ready to uncover the dark side of Hollywood. Stay tuned, and don't forget to subscribe for stories you won't believe are true. Errol Flynn, the swashbuckling predator. The phrase, "in like Flynn," wasn't just a playful Hollywood catchphrase, it was a grim reflection of one of the industry's most disturbing realities. In 1942, as America fought on the front lines of World War II, Errol Flynn was waging a very different battle against multiple charges of statutory rape. Behind the charm and adventure of his screen persona lay allegations of sexual assaults involving underage girls, wild parties at his mansion, and horrifying encounters aboard his yacht. Flynn reportedly referred to his victims as "my little flowers," a phrase that left even his own staff appalled. Some of these girls were barely 15. Yet, despite the shocking accusations, Flynn's career barely faltered. He continued to star in heroic wartime epics, celebrated as a symbol of courage and masculinity. His eventual acquittal didn't clear his name. It exposed something far darker: the way Hollywood's power and privilege could shield even its most monstrous figures from the consequences of their crimes. Elizabeth Taylor, Hollywood's husband-hunting queen. Elizabeth Taylor, celebrated as one of the most beautiful women to ever grace the silver screen, was once described as the most beautiful, venomous snake I've ever seen. It was a phrase that perfectly captured both her allure and her destructive power within Hollywood's inner circle. In the late 1950s, Taylor's relentless pursuit of love and dominance shattered one of the industry's most beloved friendships. Her focus turned to Eddie Fisher, the husband of her close friend Debbie Reynolds, and the best friend of her late husband, Mike Todd. Consumed by her own desires, Taylor disregarded loyalty and friendship, leaving chaos and heartbreak behind. Todd Fisher, the son caught in the fallout, would later speak of the pain and humiliation his family endured as his father's career collapsed under the weight of the scandal. Taylor, however, remained unapologetic. With Fisher's reputation in tatters, she simply moved on. Her next conquest came on the set of Cleopatra, Richard Burton. What began as a passionate affair soon spiraled into a volatile obsession marked by excess, jealousy, and addiction. Their relationship captivated the world, but left emotional wreckage in its wake. Across 8 marriages and countless affairs, Elizabeth Taylor's love life became as legendary as her acting. To some, she was a romantic icon. To others, a manipulator who devoured hearts and careers alike. Behind the diamonds, fame, and violet eyes was a woman whose hunger for love and control shaped not only her own destiny, but the darker, more scandalous side of Hollywood's golden age. Marlon Brando, the beautiful monster of Hollywood. Marlon Brando was the perfect illusion, a devil hidden behind an angel's face. To the world, he was the ultimate screen icon, but to those who knew him intimately, he was a man driven by cruelty and control. Actress Rita Moreno, who endured 8 years entangled in Brando's chaotic world, later revealed the true nightmare beneath his charm. "I tried to kill myself in his house," she confessed. "He watched me bleed, then called his agent before calling a doctor." What the world saw as a passionate love affair was, in reality, a story of emotional manipulation and psychological torment. But Brando's cruelty extended far beyond that relationship. On the set of Last Tango in Paris, 19-year-old actress Maria Schneider became the victim of one of the most disturbing moments in cinema history. The infamous butter scene, unscripted and done without her consent, was Brando's idea. "I felt raped," Schneider later said. Crew members recalled how Brando seemed to relish the discomfort he caused. He enjoyed breaking people, one remembered, especially young women. It was a game to him. Even his own family bore the scars of his darkness. His son, Christian, ended up in prison, while his daughter, Cheyenne, tragically took her own life, both haunted by the legacy of their father's chaos and neglect. By his later years, the once beautiful star had become a hollow reflection of his own demons. As one co-star chillingly remarked, he became what he always was, inside a creature consumed by his own corruption. Brando's brilliance changed cinema forever, but the man behind the legend revealed the ugliest truth of all. Hollywood's greatest talents hide the darkest souls. Joan Crawford, the queen of child torture. Mommy Dearest? More like Mommy Demon. Christina Crawford's shocking memoir tore down Hollywood's illusion of the perfect mother, exposing the terrifying truth behind Joan Crawford's glamorous facade. At just 13 years old, Christina faced a horror no child should ever endure. Not from a monster on screen, but from her own mother's hands tightening around her throat. "She tried to kill me," Christina later revealed. "You can see it in someone's eyes when they want you dead." To the public, Joan Crawford was the epitome of elegance and maternal warmth, often playing devoted mothers on film. But behind the closed doors of her mansion, she ruled with cruelty and control. Wire hangers became instruments of pain. Scalding water punishments were routine. And through it all, she smiled. "She would smile while hurting us," Christina recalled. "That's what made it truly terrifying. She enjoyed it." Crawford's obsession with perfection and image extended to every corner of her children's lives, transforming their home into a private house of horrors. An Academy Award winner and one of Hollywood's most powerful women, Joan Crawford mastered more than her craft. She perfected the performance of a loving mother while hiding the soul of a sadist. Kirk Douglas, Hollywood's golden monster. Kirk Douglas wasn't just one of Hollywood's most celebrated leading men. He was a figure, cloaked in darkness, behind the shine of his fame. "Keep your mouth shut, or you won't live to tell anyone." Those chilling words weren't from a movie script, but what Douglas allegedly told a 15-year-old Natalie Wood after a horrific assault at the Chateau Marmont. Behind that famous dimpled grin and polished charm lay a predator who thrived in the shadows of his own stardom. "The real Kirk Douglas would make your skin crawl," recalled a former studio employee. While he was publicly praised for his courage, like helping to end Hollywood's blacklist with Spartacus, privately, he wielded power like a weapon. Young actresses were drawn into his orbit, only to have their careers, and sometimes their lives, destroyed once he was finished with them. He collected women like trophies, one former agent revealed. For decades, whispers of violence, manipulation, and cover-ups surrounded him, but Hollywood protected its golden boy. Douglas lived to the age of 103, long enough to see his image celebrated, while the truth remained buried. He lived long enough to watch his sins forgotten, said one victim's relative bitterly. But some truths refuse to die. These are the stories Hollywood tried to erase. And if you think this is dark, just wait. Subscribe and join us as we uncover more of the real secrets behind the fame. James Dean, the demon behind the dream. James Dean, the eternal symbol of rebellion, angst, and cool, wasn't the misunderstood genius Hollywood made him out to be. Behind the brooding eyes and effortless swagger was a volatile young man whose off-screen behavior was anything but romantic. "He's an idiot. Acting is the only thing he's smart enough to do," John Wayne once said, and that cutting remark only hinted at the truth. Those who worked with Dean described him as arrogant, foul-mouthed, and impossible to deal with. Robert Mann, one of his early press representatives, called him the most unpleasant client I ever had. Even the ever-gracious Rock Hudson couldn't disguise his distaste, calling Dean a brat with no manners. Long before his fame, Dean's reputation on Broadway was already toxic. He was moody, unpredictable, and openly hostile toward co-stars. On film sets, he became infamous for deliberately sabotaging others. changing blocking mid-scene, breaking focus, and intentionally ruining takes just to unsettle fellow actors. He was like a child pulling wings off flies, one co-star recalled bitterly. But when his Porsche Spyder crashed in 1955, killing him at just 24, Hollywood turned him into a legend, a tragic symbol of youth, lost too soon. For millions, he became the embodiment of misunderstood brilliance. But for those who knew the real James Dean, his death wasn't a tragedy. It was the inevitable end of a reckless and deeply toxic life. As one director put it coldly, he didn't die young. He lived exactly as long as someone that self-destructive could. Jerry Lewis, the dark prince of comedy. "I am because he was," Jim Carrey once said, crediting Jerry Lewis as his comedic inspiration. But if Carrey had known the truth behind the curtain, those words might have carried a different tone. Behind the slapstick genius and beloved telethon host was a man whose cruelty extended far beyond the stage. Jerry Lewis, the king of comedy, ruled his home with fists and fury. His youngest son, Joseph Lewis, endured years of brutal physical and emotional abuse before being cast aside completely. His only reward for surviving the torment was total erasure from his father's life. When Joseph died of an overdose at just 45, Jerry's reaction was as cold as it was revealing. He said nothing. No public statement, no acknowledgement, not even a private word of grief. To him, his son simply ceased to exist. Some in Hollywood tried to soften the story, claiming he beat himself up 1,000 times over his son's death. But those who knew the truth spoke differently. He beat his son 1,000 times, then pretended he never existed. The dark prince of comedy made the world laugh, but behind closed doors, his legacy was one of silence, suffering, and scars that no amount of applause could ever erase. W.C. Fields, the demon behind the drinks. To the public, W.C. Fields was the lovable curmudgeon, the gin-soaked comedian who turned grumpiness into art. But behind the witty one-liners and bumbling charm hid a darkness few ever saw. Fields didn't just dislike children, as his stage persona suggested. He seemed to take genuine pleasure in tormenting them. On film sets, he went beyond jokes and jabs. Crew members recalled how he would whisper disturbing things to young co-stars between takes, watching with satisfaction as fear spread across their faces. One co-star later said he loved seeing their innocence shatter. It amused him. Many believed Fields' cruelty stemmed from his own tormented past, a way to project his childhood pain onto others. But whatever the reason, the result was the same: a trail of frightened, emotionally scarred children who never forgot the experience. Behind every drunken laugh and sharp one-liner, W.C. Fields wasn't just mocking the world. He was exorcising his demons by creating new ones in those around him. Lucille Ball, the tyrannical queen of television. To the world, Lucille Ball was the face of laughter, the fiery redhead who brought joy to millions through I Love Lucy. But behind the cameras, America's sweetheart ruled with an iron fist. Co-stars and crew who worked under her didn't see the lovable clown. They saw a ruthless perfectionist who demanded total obedience. Tony Randall once hinted at her intensity, but even his careful words couldn't capture the full extent of the fear she inspired on her sets. Behind the smiles and slapstick was a woman obsessed with control. Crew members recalled how she spared no one's feelings, publicly tearing down those who disappointed her. Young actresses were often her favorite targets, reduced to tears as Ball delivered biting insults and cutting sarcasm in front of everyone. Quaint, she enjoyed breaking people, one producer admitted. It gave her power. To some, her cruelty was a mask, an attempt to conceal deep insecurities and the trauma of years spent fighting for respect in a male-dominated industry. But whatever the cause, the result was the same: a reign of terror disguised beneath a laugh track. Lucille Ball wasn't just the queen of television, she was its most feared ruler. a woman whose brilliance came with a darkness few dared to challenge. Bette Davis, Hollywood's most beautiful nightmare. Bette Davis was more than a screen legend. She was a hurricane in human form, a woman whose ferocity off-camera often eclipsed her iconic performances. Hollywood hailed her as its First Lady, but behind the glamour was a tyrant who could ruin careers with a single phone call. Co-stars lived in constant fear of her calculated cruelty. On the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Davis allegedly kicked Joan Crawford in the head, not by accident, but with deliberate malice. She enjoyed causing real pain, a crew member later admitted. The more it hurt, the more she smiled. Her cruelty extended beyond colleagues. Even her own daughter, B.D. Hyman, revealed the terrifying reality behind the legend in her memoir, exposing a woman whose cruelty was not a performance. Mother wasn't acting in her horror films, B.D. wrote. She was just being herself. And Davis's chilling reaction to her daughter's revelations? She can write whatever lies she wants. She's dead to me anyway. Bette Davis wasn't just a Hollywood icon. She was a beautiful nightmare whose venom left scars far deeper than the screen could ever show. Orson Welles, the genius who devoured souls. Orson Welles was more than a cinematic genius. He was a man whose brilliance hid a corrosive darkness. Colleagues often encountered a cruelty that matched his intellect. When Richard Burton greeted him in 1983, Welles's reply was blunt and unfiltered. "Go yourself." But this wasn't mere rudeness. It was a window into a lifetime of psychological destruction. Welles didn't just create masterpieces, he consumed the spirits of those around him. He devoured people's spirits, one colleague recalled. His barbed tongue spared no one. Marlon Brando was a huge sausage, Bette Davis beneath contempt, and even his employers weren't safe from his scathing criticism. He hated everyone who paid him, a former agent revealed. By the end of his life, the legendary filmmaker had become a bloated, bitter shadow of his former self, a living embodiment of the darkness that had long lurked beneath the genius. Orson Welles didn't just make films. He left a trail of fear, humiliation, and shattered spirits in his wake. Spencer Tracy, the Catholic devil. Nobody at MGM gets more sex than Spencer Tracy. In Hollywood, that wasn't just gossip. It was a warning. Beneath the public image of a devout Catholic husband and upstanding leading man lurked a predator who treated the studio like his personal hunting ground. Tracy's conquests read like a roll call of Hollywood's greatest stars. Ingrid Bergman, Hedy Lamarr, Gene Tierney. But these weren't romances. They were calculated exercises in power. He seduced women only to break them emotionally and professionally. A former studio executive described it as his way of marking territory, leaving behind a trail of crushed spirits. Even his legendary relationship with Katharine Hepburn wasn't what it seemed. While maintaining the facade of a faithful husband, Tracy carried on a 26-year affair that Hollywood knew about, but never spoke of. Spencer Tracy's life was a masterclass in manipulation. Behind the charm, the awards, and the reverence, he thrived on deceit, control, and the silent destruction of those who crossed his path. Frank Sinatra, the monster behind the voice. Frank Sinatra, Old Blue Eyes, was more than a legendary singer. Behind a smooth voice and charming smile lurked a man with a dark, fearsome side. From his 1938 arrest for seduction to a 40-year-long FBI investigation, Sinatra's story was far more sinister than any hit record. He wasn't just connected to the mob. According to one FBI agent, in some ways, he was even more dangerous than the gangsters themselves. His infamous 300-page FBI file offers only a glimpse into a life built on intimidation and control. Sinatra didn't just sing about doing it my way. He lived it, often by terrifying anyone who crossed him. Journalists were threatened, rivals were beaten, and critics were silenced through his criminal connections. Behind the glitz, the fame, and the awards, Sinatra's true legacy was written not in music, but in fear. Greta Garbo, the Ice Queen's reign of terror. Greta Garbo, Hollywood's enigmatic ice queen, wasn't just reclusive. She was a master of psychological cruelty. Her cutting dismissal of Marion Davies, "To me, you're null and void," was more than gossip. It revealed a calculated desire to dominate and humiliate. Her silence wasn't about privacy. It was about power. Garbo didn't just withdraw from the world. She weaponized her isolation to control and torment others. A former assistant recalled how she would invite fellow stars to her set, only to eject them in public, feeding off their embarrassment like a predator savoring its prey. This was no mere scandal. It was a system of manipulation. In Hollywood, where fame and image ruled, Garbo's icy detachment masked a darker reality. A world where exclusion and humiliation were tools, and broken spirits were collateral damage for a woman who thrived on control. Bill Cosby, America's beloved monster. For more than 5 decades, Bill Cosby wore the mask of America's perfect father. But behind the image of Dr. Huxtable, he orchestrated a systematic campaign of abuse that rivals Hollywood's darkest scandals. His attacks were chillingly methodical. Cosby didn't just assault women. He groomed them, using quaaludes, mentorship, and promises of career advancement. He positioned himself as a father figure to young actresses and models. He didn't just take their bodies, a former NBC executive revealed. He took their trust in humanity. The pattern was always the same: a promising career opportunity, a drugged drink, and then exploitation. Each act was carefully planned, and his celebrity shielded him from suspicion. Even while portraying the ideal family man on The Cosby Show, he was committing horrors behind the scenes. After his conviction and later release on a legal technicality, Cosby showed no remorse, portraying himself as a victim of racial injustice. One accuser noted, "He's not just a predator. He's a master manipulator, still rewriting history." For every woman who came forward, countless others remained silenced by trauma and fear. Cosby's legacy is more than a tarnished TV show. It is a half-century reign of terror, a chilling reminder that the faces of cultural icons can mask the darkest of truths.